You're right. It
Now it
was
is.
paused. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one way to break it down, John, is, if it's a particular, like if it's trash at a particular property, a tree that needs to get trimmed, a location, I think often the district staff is most able to help you more readily a lot of times, because they have the connections with the people on the boots on the ground in the city departments who can respond to those requests. I think, as a general rule, like if it's sort of more policy related, a more general issue, often the folks downtown, and whoever you get in touch with will put you in the right person. But in terms of a starting point, that can be,
yeah,
that
but
can be
I just want to say, Marty and John, I don't want to dispute what Jeff's saying, but there's a slight difference with me as deputy chief, where I oversee both staffs and along with our chief and our district director, but in different ways. So I'm kind of doing policy and the action on the ground. So we're pretty much strict on policy, but does a lot of projects. And whereas a district staff member many times is just dealing with the field, I'm kind of overseeing both to make sure. I'm working on these speed humps on Van Alden because I'm stepping right into it. So I want you to know that you can personally reach out to me and I will do it. I don't want you to get an.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, and following up on what you said about wanting to get legislation from us, let's dovetail over into the issues of not to that one, but over here to this one. This has to do with 8502, which is the RVs. And as all of us know, that you're working on the homelessness issues and trying to get people to get out of certain areas and move them around. And we'll come to that in a moment. But the RVs have been something that's been sticking in everybody's craw over here. And Bob has just apparently put in a motion to start doing something with 8502. But the problem has been with 8502 is this, that 8502 had a sunset provision. And the sunset provision here was for it to go away in January the 1st of 2020, unless somebody does something about that. Nobody's doing anything about that. We've lost that provision to try to say, all right, let's have between 9 and 6 a.m., nobody's able to park basically in residential streets. And I know that there was a map that was drawn from that at one point in time that was, interesting from a standpoint of where people could or could not go. But right now, we don't have anything on the RVs. What the heck is going on with that? And why don't we have the RVs in as part of that? They cleaned up stuff down by the bowl on Ventura Boulevard, and but they didn't touch the RVs because the RVs are off limits. What the heck?
No, it's a great point you bring up, and you and I kind of touched base on this a little earlier. And I was and when I sent you, and I don't know if you have that to post if you need to, but you've got it. You do it however you want to post. But thank you for pointing it out. We had the motion. This was a year and a half ago. Bob stood up, told the council president at the time that we couldn't let this lapse. And we were trying to force an extension, but the council president at that time wouldn't schedule it. He said it was for the next council president. The new council president promised to bring it forward, but then COVID hit. We are going to make something happen, but it should not be allowed in residential neighborhoods. I want to be that clear on that. Sadly, you say, what the heck is happening, is the same frustration I have. There isn't always the political will, and that's why we could use your help, the Woodland Hills Homeowners Organization, to email the council president and say, I want this scheduled. Because when you talk about being downtown, John, I couldn't tell you how many times when I argue with my colleagues of other council members who do not represent the Valley, not even close to where we are, let alone the Valley at all. And they think it's all hunky-dory out here, and they think we don't have any issues. And they disregard us. And I have to fight and fight to tell them, give them a little history lesson of what we're fighting for. And so I think in this situation where on a parallel track, I'm actually working just today, I have a meeting set up with the head of the Bureau of Street Services, our new head, Keith Mosé, called Streets LA. We're looking at, my proposal is to look at the corner of Alabama and Keswick avenues to use a urban forestry division lot, city lot. It would be the first in the city to do this, to bring RV parking there, to have all the amenities to keep this clean. We want them off the streets. We want them out of the neighborhoods. And sadly, we don't have the political will, as I just pointed out to you from a couple of current council president, previous one, to support this.
John,
Yeah.
that's all well and good, but I hear about this every single day. And the answer out of the CD3 is basically, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We hear it. Yes, we hear you. I'll make a note. I'll mention it to the councilman, blah, blah, blah. It's also, delay and resist, and there's no action. I think the problem is that Bob is not standing forward. He's not addressing the greater public and telling them, look, I made a motion. It's out there. It worked when we had this working. Why? I need you folks, not just in my district, but every damn district, to get up there and start talking to your council person and tell him you want him, her, to pass this damn thing. Yeah, you're right. It's been a year and a half now. And the reason that it's, I don't know who put the sunset in, but that person should not be serving on the city council. Okay? It was a moronic thing to do. But people are frustrated. And one of the frustrations is Bob is not coming forward and taking a stand. If he wants to operate sub rosa, okay, to a certain point, but it's at some point for the community, he's got to jump to the front of the army. You don't command from the rear, and Bob's not commanding from the front.
John, I can imagine that if Bob was to have a press meeting out in front of some of these RVs and ask the Chamber of Commerce, the homeowners, the neighborhood council to come out and support him on that and started pressing on it as to why it's needed, I bet you he might get a bit more of a response to it than what he has in the past. We'll be happy to put out to our membership and what have you to start doing letters. You say it should go off to the president of the council to put it on calendar. Is she just refusing to put it on calendar? Again, talking about how the sausage is made, why is it not on calendar? Why can't Bob just stand up and say, I want this motion up on calendar, and it gets on calendar? What happens?
To answer your question, John, yes, she's refusing to put it on. And yes, the council president, Herb Wesson, before that refused to put it on. And Marty, I totally understand and agree with you. One, let me just say that if somebody from our office is like, well, the council member did, I'm sorry that they would give you an answer like that. The only thing I could chalk that up to is them maybe not knowing the issue. But to your greater point about Bob standing up, this is where I feel that it's not Bob, it's the area we represent downtown. And this is the frustration I discovered going from being a field rep in the state assembly to a council member staff representing an area I love and have lived in for 30 years, that there's other offices, and maybe later we'll get into the names of some of those offices. I'm trying to be polite here, who don't want to see this scheduled for whatever their political arguments are. And Bob had to push to even get that extension at the time, where they were just going to let it sneak by and slide by. So I'm with you.
Tell us, John, who's holding this thing up? I mean, this makes no sense to me whatsoever. That I think everybody who's looked at this, I don't care where they are in the city, wants to do something about that. And somebody's standing in the way of this happening, and it doesn't make any sense. What's going on?
I think your first step would be, like I said, if you emailed the council president and every council member, as you said, Marty, and to get that motion scheduled. And I like your idea, John and Marty, about maybe we do something where we stand in front of these RVs, we bring in you, we bring in the chambers, and we say, listen, we want this scheduled. As you said, we got to stand up and say we want it scheduled.
Bring in the news media. I don't know who's heading your public relations group for the CD3, but they're woefully inadequate, frankly. They should do exactly what you said, John, and that is schedule something with the news media. Get in front of these RVs, put it on film, get it on the news, get it on all 6 major channels that are carrying local news.
Yeah,
and
listen,
make it a critical point. And if
Bob's going to run for office
So-
next term up. He's got office coming up. This is the best time for him to start showing that he's out there and doing this stuff. Marty, I didn't mean to cut you off on it, but John, this brings me to another point that's sort of that sticks in everybody's craw too. You mentioned about getting the Forestry Service to go out and to do something about putting up some kind of a location to put the RVs at. One of the problems we've had has been this transparency issue that has to do with what we went through this with, where the little houses are going to be and all these other things too. The stuff is just sort of done, and then we find out about it afterwards. There's no outreach to the community to go, listen, this is what we're looking at. This is what we're thinking about doing. What do you guys think? Is there a better way to do it? Do you find any things that we haven't done here and what have you? I think that while you guys have got expertise that are there, nevertheless, we have to live with your expertise on the things you decide to do. And then we come in afterwards to try to clean up the mess. We see that with what's going on with redistricting. I mean, that's a nightmare. We'll get to that in a few moments too. Why can't you be a bit more open with us about things that you're planning to do rather than saying this is what we've done?
You know, and I know someone, and I want to address this because this may sound like it too. I can't find it. I'm bouncing between the chat and Q&A who put, you know, this is all double talk.
Yep, there's double talk.
It's heartbreaking to hear.
That was Susan said that.
Yeah, Susan, it's heartbreaking to hear that because I'm not double talking you. I didn't grow up double talking people. I'm sharing with you the actual frustration of the people downtown. And you know, you don't know Jeff maybe from a hole in the ground, but how many arguments I've gotten in with the staff of other council members who don't care what we have to say. So I'm not trying to say, oh, woe is me, but I am saying there's a reality that I discovered not until I worked downtown of the behavior of some members and some staff. Now, John, to your point about with
transparency.
Thank you. With the people not reaching out to you.
Yep.
You know, if that's the truth, then that's bothersome. That's something I have to address. And that's where I have to talk to our district director and say, listen, you know, I'm involved, the deputy chief, yes, how's this work? Why aren't they being addressed ahead of time? I would like to know though, have you ever shared, and I hope if you haven't, I want to know, maybe you wouldn't be able to tell me tonight, but where do you want homeless interventions in Woodland Hills? I want us to get those for where you want them, where who wants them, and really finally address that. I mean, that's to me a question that I thought had been asked by Bob and other staff.
Bob has asked that from day one. I'll be honest with you on that, John. That's been a question that's gone on, but here's sort of the problem with it. I mean, the first reaction is to everybody is obviously not my backyard because it doesn't make any sense. One of the things that goes on that we would be better off with, if you as staff who will know it better than us, is listen, we look at this particular area, we find there's 5 areas that will work for the following reasons, because there's property that's available. I mean, we got some property that's LA Unified School District. It's up here. I think it's on Sherman Way. That's not maybe on Victory. That's not being utilized for anything. It looks like it's storage areas that are up there. Why can't that be utilized? What about the new building that's here with where Anthem used to be? The whole building's up for sale. Why can't that be utilized at some point for, you know, rent out some of the floors for it? I think if there was somebody in the office that was saying, hey, listen, we're going to have an internal meeting, you know, today with 3 of our staff members, and we're going to try to take a look at what things are available. We got a list of 5 or 6 of them. Let's go to the Zoom meeting with Chamber of Commerce, with the Neighborhood Council, with the homeowners organization, and see what everybody's got to say about it. It may turn out to be nothing more than people complaining about everything, but there might be some ideas that come out of it. And at least if nothing else, there'll be a feeling of at least participation. And sometimes that's where it becomes important that you have a feeling of participation in what's going on, other than just being directed and being pushed around. And that's what we're feeling right now, I think, with what's going on with the school districts and with the council district too.
Sure, John. I mean, I guess if I could just, oh, go ahead, Marty. Was that Marty? Sorry.
Oh, no, this is Ari. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm not
Ari.
agreeing
Hi,
with-
sorry. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for your time tonight. Well, one of the things I just wanted to follow up on is stuff like we find out through the motions, like the ADU or the self-help and recovery exchange program. Some of these things we only find out through the motions. We spoke to 2 of your members of your staff, and we talked about what precautions are going to be in there, such as will there be background checks for the ADUs and all that stuff. And you know what? They didn't even know, and they said they would get back to us, and we never heard anything back.
Okay.
And
They came to one of our meetings a couple of months ago.
yeah, and it's about transparency. It's like we're finding the stuff out through motions instead of the councilman coming directly to us and saying, "This is what I'm thinking about doing. I want some feedback." We're not hearing that.
You know, John, we would love for facts that, listen, there was just a motion that was just placed in, I think it was this morning by Romans on this affordable housing overlay zones.
Yep.
Why should we be hearing about that they're doing? You guys must know that that was coming up. If you know that those things are coming up and you like it or you don't like it, if you need our support or you need our opposition to it, why aren't you on the phone to the neighborhood council, the chamber, and to us and saying, listen, this stuff is coming up. We got a rogue person that's downtown that's proposing the stuff that's going to mess things up over here. We need to stop this too. We're all here to work together in some fashion. We're here to utilize your talents. We hope that you can utilize some of the talents that we have too.
Before I jump in, I know, Jeff, you wanted to say something previously, so I'll just pause for a sec.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to respond. You know, I think one of the challenges certainly around the homeless locations is there is not a significant sized, underutilized or vacant property that our office has not approached the property owner or the commercial leasing to try to see if they're willing or open to being even a temporary location for a homeless intervention, right? And the fact of the matter is there are almost no private property owners who are interested in being part of the solution in that way. And so, you know, I think, you know, we hear your point about Anthem and all these other locations. I mean, and we've reached out to every property owner I'm sure that anybody in this group could come up with, right?
Jeff,
and the answer,
let me ask you this one. We have this has been one I've been asking questions on for a long time and haven't got an answer to. There's got to be one. The county USC medical facility got closed down because it didn't meet the requirements to be a hospital anymore, and they built a brand new one down there. But that other facility still exists. Every one of those little rooms, if you will, has got a bathroom in them. They have the facility that has a big cafeteria that's available there. They even have jail facilities that are down there for people to be able to be jailed if they had to. Now, I got to tell you, it probably can't be brought up to the standard of a hospital, but that building is still there. I don't understand why the city is not working out with the county, which has got county's got the responsibility for the mental health issues, to try to say, listen, this might be a great place to be able to house a lot of people that need mental health. We can utilize both the city's assets as well as the county's assets to try to do something. I think there's another facility up in the northern part of the valley that might be able to do the same thing.
I think the challenge with that hospital is that it was vacated because it didn't meet the earthquake standards, right?
I don't think that was it. I thought
that was part of it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these older buildings. I mean, and I guess, I mean, to the point, you know, one issue that I think challenge that we face kind of on homelessness is many of the folks who are homeless, even in the West Valley, right, have some sort of tie to the West Valley. They may have mental health and addiction issues or whatever reason they're on the street, but that they are, they have some tie that keeps them in the West Valley. And so one of the challenges has been, and, you know, early on, I think the council member learned this lesson is, you know, we were focused on trying to find people housing and put them in a location. And when it wasn't, you know, was on the other side of the hill, when it was downtown or in the south, in, you know, down in the harbor or something, they very quickly ended up back on the streets of the West Valley because that's where they consider the West Valley home. And so that's why the council member has been very focused on, I think, trying to find and create interventions that are local. And you know, and also part of it is, you know, the reality is council members who represent other areas, you know, want the interventions that are created there to serve their own homeless populations, not ones from other parts of the city. And so that's a, you know, just a political challenge that we face.
Well, you know, it seems again to me that we all can work together to try to figure this out some way. Right now, it looks like everybody's going to go in, not my backyard. Even council members from others are doing, I don't want this in my backyard. And if it is going to be in my backyard, I want it just for my people that are there. I mean, we've heard, for example, from some of the senior lead officers that, this is back a while ago, I don't know if it's still the case or not, that there were a lot of homeless people coming to Woodland Hills because we're very generous here. We would be the first ones at the marketplace to go buy them some food and give them some food if they're standing outside with their child, or if they're on the side of the freeway, to give them a couple of dollars or what have you. And the officer was saying, stop that, because they're coming from all over the entire country to an area they hear about that they know that people are going to be generous. Now, that may not be the case any longer, and I'm not trying to say that's what's making this happen at all. But I'm saying that there's got to be some coordinated efforts that's being utilized here, because, for example, the people have come back. I'm hearing today the people have come back under Corbyn again. You guys did a very good job on trying to be able to clear out people from underneath the overpasses. And what happens? They go away for a certain period of time and they're back. And that, it seems like, you know, this is, you know, the old whack-a-mole routine, that nothing seems to be really truly happening. And if it's because it's a mental health issue, then everybody wants to point the finger to the county and say the county has to do that. The city doesn't have the ability to do it because it's not in it. Then heck, let's change what the city is doing and put in some kind of a mental health division in the city of LA that can take care of the people that are straight within the city. Why is it? I mean, we got to do something about it. We just can't let this continue on. This has happened over the past 3 or 4 years, and I've been out here for what, 40 years now, 40 some odd years. And this has never been like this. Never been like this.
John,
you can't blame it on COVID either.
No, and I agree with you. And I moved here, as I said, I lived in this area 30 years ago, and absolutely agree with you. It is completely different. It is not what it was. I lived at Corbin and Ventura, and I don't mean I lived at Corbin and Ventura. I mean, in the house right down the street behind the 7-Eleven, a couple houses down, and yet no, that it was not like that. And I just quickly want to say that sometimes there's motions, because you mentioned something earlier, John, and then I'll jump to 4118, but you mentioned something earlier about we must have known. We really honestly do not know when a council member is going to introduce a motion unless they approached us to say they were going to. And the first time we'll find out about it is on the floor when they actually submit the motion. They don't have to speak it. They just hand it in to the chief legislative analyst, who stamps it and then passes it around. If that's the way we, unless there's someone who says, oh, do you want to co-author this motion? Then we'll know. But I like your idea, what you all said about, you know, approaching you more often and saying, listen, hey, there's a motion going in, or we're going to work on one, or someone's approaching it. What do you think? We will do that. And not to mention, I think it was Jan Lawson, I appreciate it, saying the roundtables again, and understanding, like you said, you know, that attitude from downtown into San Fernando Valley is you're okay, quit your complaining. I mean, it's true. And I don't want to have that complaining, you know, side of it, because I'm a glass half full guy. But moving on to 4018, we crafted it a year and a half ago, and it was too controversial for some members and they wouldn't let it get out of committee. It sounds like a broken record, doesn't it? So here's one of the moments we're fighting for the Valley. Jeff and I and our staff at that time went to every underpass and posted signs that we were going to be cleaning them and offering everyone shelters. Bob's policy has always been to try and get every homeless person in the shelter where they can get the humane treatment, all of that, and protecting our rights to be able to walk on the sidewalk unimpeded. You know what was going on at Winnetka Avenue and Taft, and Jeff himself, me helping people navigate into the street. It's ridiculous to be able to walk by. And Judge Carter came along and said, you offer everyone who's homeless shelter, provide that sheltering, and you can have your sidewalks back. Well, we had been doing it and we ramped it up. Everyone took us up on our offers except for 2 people at that time. But here we go again. We couldn't get 4118 out of committee. We couldn't. and so what we did is we just, some districts, Councilman Mike Bonin's district, Nithya Raman's district, they didn't want or weren't ready to dig in and provide the outreach. So when we finally got it out of committee, a year and a half later, we had to soften it a little bit. And we made it pass. First thing we introduced those series of resolutions, and it wasn't easy. We got it passed by a vote of 12-2. Bonin and Raman voted no. Now we will be posting signs to permanently prohibit camping in these areas. We'll still do the intense outreach and push our county counterparts. You mentioned that earlier, and LASA, the LA Homeless Services Authority, to do their part in providing services as they're required to do while we provide the cabin communities and the bridge homes.
John, two questions off of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
First one, and then we'll come back to that specifically. It seems to me, not knowing any better, that you as a deputy chief of staff should be having weekly or monthly meetings with every other chief of staff of the other 14 districts and sitting down with them over a cup of coffee downtown at lunch or whatever, and saying to you, what are you guys working on? What's coming up? How can we help you with this? Or you're going to get a pushback because of the following reasons for this. Don't bother with it. It's going to be a waste of time. I can't believe that you guys are not working with each other and finding out what's going on in the other districts. We're one entire city. I just can't imagine that's not going on.
And I will say, yeah, go ahead, Marty. Yeah.
1 second. There's a good question that came up here from Mark S. and a good point. And I think, we're talking about one facet of it, which is your guys' motion, et cetera. But you know what? There's on things like, as Mark says, about the ADUs and the shared housing pilot projects. You guys don't share. You spring that on us. We don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
I read the internet constantly for what the hell's going on. I can no longer depend on the LA Times or the Daily News. But you guys know what's coming up, and you don't bother to share it with the community. It just springs up and ta-da! Guess what I'm doing? Not right. The outreach is just awful.
Yeah, the ADU was an issue that we were having some difficulties with because there's no outreach on that one at all. But coming back, John, to what you were saying now about with what's going on with your posting and now doing the enforcement, what actually is going to happen now that you do have the abilities with the motion having been passed that you can do a permanent posting of those locations? What's going to happen? What's the physical process? How long is it going to take? What can we expect to see, and when can we expect to see it?
Well, you're going to see permanent signs being put up, and they're made right now, but they're taking too long. The city bureaucracy is taking too long. So we're making up our own signs within the next couple of weeks here to put them up, making sure the city attorney doesn't say we added something to it that's going to get us sued. And we're going to put them up ourselves, just like a year and a half ago when we were cleaning up the area. And then we will go out there and keep pushing on LASA to do the outreach. And if they don't do the outreach, right, then we're going to be looking at an RFP to have someone else do the outreach. And the last case scenario would be to call the police. We don't want to have to do that, but that's where we would get to if we had to. Now, John, we've had more, people will say downtown we have less homeless than any other area, but one homeless person is one homeless person. It needs to get, and I've seen Bob go out there himself, take $300 out of his pocket to get his son united with his mother by buying a bus ticket. I've seen him take his shoes off his feet and give them to someone. You won't read about that. Sadly, there are activists out there who think they're being advocates, but I never understood why we don't work together. So of those 26 locations in that map, 18 of them are underpasses and are pedestrian bridges near freeways. 7 are intervention sites and 1 is a park. Only a small majority of these locations are currently encamped, and all these locations have had regular contact with LASA. Now, I'm here to tell you, I'm not a big fan of LASA, and so we're really pushing hard on them. For example, at Corbin, LASA has visited this location 23 times in the last 2 months and provided services to 37 individuals experiencing homelessness. 30 were placed in interim housing. Our office continues to push on LASA And we are going to now have this, and by the way, the part I left out of the resolution, there has to be a 2-week notice period in these designated areas to inform folks of the pending prohibition that they cannot sit, sleep, lie, or store personal property. And then after the 2-week notice period, the area will be designated a no encampment zone.
How long is it going to take to do a request for a proposal if you want to change them over? We've got 2 weeks. We got to post now at this point in time. If they don't come out to do the interventions, you got to get another group that's in. What are we looking at?
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Well, you said that you may have to do a request for a proposal if the group. That's doing the
Oh,
intervention's not there.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
if that happens, I mean, that's a 6-month process at least. You're looking at another year.
I know. That's why we're trying to pound LASA. It's a rock and a hard place, because we went through big budget and had to do an extension with LASA, and me personally, I'm not a big fan. And
All right. Well,
we're trying to avoid the RFP process.
I understand. So that shouldn't be at that point.
And John, can I just go back to one thing you said? You asked sort of why we don't all
Yes,
just
Jeff.
get in a room together and talk policy. Is part of it is we have the Brown Act, right? Which
That
sort of
shouldn't apply to
prohibits,
staff.
it does apply to staff and it applies to different offices. So like, unlike in the state legislature, right, which didn't make themselves subject to the Brown Act, right? They can get in a room and hash things out and talk about whatever they want. Is we're actually prohibited from having policy discussions with too many different offices, and we have to pay attention to who's on members of what committee, and that is it makes our work
Jeff,
much
I
more
have some
difficult.
of my own problems with the Brown Act. If the Brown Act is prohibiting that, then so be it. But there should be some way to work around that to where you guys will still know what's going on. And if nothing else, when a motion is proposed, it's still got to go through generally mostly committees and what have you beforehand. It's not going to hit the city council's desk for everybody to vote on for a good period of time. If we know what's coming down, what's happened at that point in time from day one, you guys should see it and say, all right, this one's come up at this point. I see this being a problem for the community for the following reasons, or something good. We need you to support this, or we need you to take a good look and see which way you want to go with this. You have no idea how much we'd appreciate that. We have our own very, very, very full lives with stuff that's going on. You guys are in the thick of it. You got your nose right in underneath the tent, if you will. And we're just out here, getting sand thrown in our eyes most of the time.
So let's do it, John.
Guys, we need to do
John,
redistricting.
Yeah, Marty, go ahead.
I just want to say
Hang on, Marty.
things. One, I want to say, let's do it, John. You got our word. Anytime that we're bringing up a motion that we even think comes remotely close to what would be affecting you, that's not something innocuous, we will send it to you and your feedback.
We appreciate that more than you know. We're going to move on to redistricting. Aaron, I see.
I want to say one more thing,
Please,
John.
let's get it quick. Get to redistricting.
I know a lot of people want to talk about redistricting, but a lot of people want to talk about this as well. And that is, John, when Bob first co-authored and brought forward 4118, WHO was one of the only organizations that supported it.
Absolutely.
You would have thought that maybe we would have heard back from the council office. Thank you. What else can we work on together? We heard nothing from the council office. And then it just sat in the committee forever. And we kept asking Bob, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on with this thing? Why is it just sitting there dying? And he was just like, well, there's nothing I could do about it. My hands are tied. And then I kind of see him trying to take credit for it being back on the being passed, but that was John Lee and Bruce Guyana who got it out of the committee by using that special rule. And then it got amended to death, and all those resolutions where it's so watered down now that it really has no teeth in it whatsoever. So that's part of the community's frustration as well.
Yeah, you took out sub D on that stuff. All right, Aaron, let's move on to redistricting. We got a lot of people want to hear about it. I don't want too much longer on time.
But I take what you say to heart, Aaron, and anything that we don't address tonight, John, Aaron, and anyone else who's writing that about Buscano, Lee, I want to be able to tell you how Bob was involved in making that happen along with them, even if it appears otherwise. And what you said about you supported it, I want to be able to address that. And I know we don't get to, I'll stay as long as you want tonight, but I also,
all right, then let's
follow up with me. Follow up with me. I'll put my email in the chat. Follow up with me.
Give me 2 minutes with it, John, on your explanation to it. I'll hold you to the 2 minutes on, and we're going to get over to redistricting. I think a lot of people are, I don't want to lose a lot of people. They're going to go to sleep on us here.
No, but no, John, if you want to move, you can have them email me. and
All
we'll-
right, let's go into redistricting.
Okay.
What the heck has happened with redistricting? As you well know, let me see if I can pull this one up here. This is where we are now. This is District 3 that has been gerrymandered out. Normally we're cutting off right around in here. You will notice this little spot that's in here. This is Pierce College. They cut out like 2 hours before they did the final meeting that they decided to pull Pierce College out of that. Pierce College has been part of District 3 and the work we've done in Woodland Hills for like ever. The other area they pulled out was this section over in here. They dropped down to Victory Boulevard, which basically splits out Warner Center in this particular area. We got problems then with what happens with those developments there, what's going to happen with the funds that are going to come out of those particular things. This makes no sense at all. There's a requirement under the charter that things are to be kept geographically compact. This no way looks geographically compact when you start looking at things. I cannot imagine that the councilman is happy with this. There's an ad hoc committee, a motion by the president of the council for an ad hoc committee to look at redistricting. I think it only have about a month because it's got to get passed by the end of the year, and by January 1, it goes into effect. Tell me how's the sausage being made on this one? What are you guys going to do? How's staff going to handle this? And what's going to happen with this ridiculous District 3 that we've got here that nobody likes and nobody listens to, and I don't think the commission likes.
Well, I smile only because I spent several hours, as I know did Bob and Lisa and Jeff and I and Jake on our team, watching and listening to every district meeting, redistricting commission meeting. I can't speak for every council office, that's for darn sure, but I know that I personally, neither did Jeff, ever have direct contact with our commissioner. I want you to know that. I know that only any time that Lisa maybe spoke to him, it was disclosed as it was. And I think we kind of left Richard Katz was our appointee to his own devices, which was what you were supposed to do. Every council office was supposed to do that. And you know, Richard Katz, for those of you who don't know, I mean, he was one of there's plenty of Mr. Valleys. He was one of them. He was one of the ones who's fought hard for the Valley for many years in the assembly.
I worked with Richard on
years.
secession. I worked with Richard on secession back in 2020 when we worked on secession. I worked with Richard on that. And so I know he was around with that. He's been in the legislature. He knows finances. He knows budgeting on stuff and what have you. I am shocked to see this coming out of Richard's hand to approve this.
Well, and I'll tell you something, John. I think knowing him and Marty that was before there was term limits, Marty. So you're okay now. But I was going to say that that part of the issue with Richard that I saw him getting beaten up on that was that original K2.5 map had Pierce College, had all of Warner Center, right? And what happened was you had this small faction of people who I think 5 out of 21, because 5 out of 21 voted against it, pushed and pushed and pushed to say, we don't have any assets. We don't have any assets. And they forced him, I mean, not forced him, but you know, the votes got there to try and take away Pierce College when they were going to take away Warner Center. Then they split Warner Center. So I'm not making excuses for him. I just remember seeing it happening because the original CD3 in the K2.5 map, not the final, but the one that was just a month ago, I still had Pierce College and all of Warner Center together. It even had the Sepulveda Basin for 2 seconds.
It still was way out of line because it goes all the way out to Valley Village, and it's still that's an outside. There's such a difference between the two areas, between the East Valley and the West Valley, of what the interests are. That any council member that comes into that is going to be so pulled apart on trying to take care of the constituencies, it's ridiculous. And
Well,
for me,
yeah.
looking at a redistricting, you're supposed to keep the district basically as it was, except
Right.
where you need to make some modifications depending upon what's going on with population and redistribution. This is totally different. There's no continuity of our unity of neighborhoods at all. The Woodland Hills is divided up at that point in time. It's stretched out at that particular stage and has to be in competition with people like Sherman Oaks and Valley Village to try to get the councilman's attention on things that need to be done and where the expenditures are going to go on. That makes no sense to me whatsoever on a redistricting concept.
I want to add something in there.
Go ahead, Marty.
what nobody has brought up, and it certainly hasn't hit the news, and it certainly isn't even being discussed by the committee that's putting this thing together. A bunch of West Valley neighborhood councils got together. We didn't get together. We actually found out what everybody else wanted, and there was an ideal CD3 map that was drawn, and it was like 5777 or something. I can't remember what it is.
57666.
Yeah, okay, fine.
57666.
That is what the vast majority of people in the West Valley, in the current CD3, and even in adjacent areas really wanted. There was no quarter given to what the community wants, only what these clowns that got selected for the committee have managed to negotiate like a bunch of 12th century barons. And this is not the Dark Ages anymore. And I think the people are getting tired of being treated like that.
Yeah, and John, I think what you've got to recognize is that if the councilman doesn't take a position on trying to get the district back to a normalcy, to what it used to be before at that point in time, it's the same thing with LA Unified School District, because we've got a split that's going on with that right now. If he doesn't try to do something to keep the Woodland Hills areas, all of those part of those districts, we've got to, the conclusion we're going to come to is he's walking away from us too. And if he does that, then we got to walk away from him. I don't want to do that. He's been excellent for us in the stuff that's going on. Go ahead, Jeff.
John, I guess what I'll say is, I mean, for anybody who knows Bob, like, he's a believer in process, right? And the process that was set up under the city charter is the elected officials each, he gets to make his appointment, and then the commission is supposed to do its work. And I think Bob will have a lot to say, but the commission actually will make its final recommendation tomorrow night.
Oh, tomorrow night,
right?
Given to you on Friday,
right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so he has been silent. John, you can, add in if you want, because that's what the process is supposed to be in his view, that he, and not everyone believes in that and has been doing that, but he truly, in his heart of hearts, believes that that's what the process is supposed to be. The commission's supposed to do its work, and then then he as a council member gets to weigh in on that, their recommendations and their product.
Let me add to that,
It's advisory only. It's advisory only.
Yeah,
Right. John, let me just add to that for a second, as Jeff pointed out, and I appreciate, Jeff, the way you put that, was he's been waiting for them to submit their final, as Jeff said. It was not our place. I don't care what another council member did. It was questionably unethical for some chiefs of staff of another council member to send out an email in the middle of the process to the community and say, write to every one of these commissioners.
I agree.
And tell you and say that you don't like this.
I agree.
Not right. Let it take its course. They were following the Voting Rights Act as they claim. And even if you don't like it should be a truly independent commission and not tied to the council. I get that. That's what the state redistricting is doing. But you are going to hear from Bob more. We have a lot of projects. The Reseda hockey rink that I've been working on since 2015 with people I used to work for, I don't want to see go. The Canoga Park Arts Walk area, all these areas that we were trying to work on, we had a great thing. There was no request. We were flabbergasted, to see that the district changed. Let me tell you something. This isn't about me, but I moved to Tarzana 6 months ago. I was living in Encino. If I thought the district was gonna include Encino, I wouldn't have jumped and moved to Tarzana and caused tension with my wife and uprooted my kids and cost myself thousands of dollars to move to be closer where I love and care about the district. And I know that's besides the point, but I'm just saying it's just crazy. We weren't tied into it. Others were political. So you will see him speak up, but I appreciate, John, you telling me about how you stand, because I really hope that as of right now, before this thing gets to the ad hoc committee that the council president has created, speaks up and says what you want and says it often.
We already have. We've already done a position letter to that. We looked at 57666. Say that that's appropriate. We had a kickback by somebody who says, oh, it didn't get in time. It missed it by 5 minutes or something in timing. So was it supposed to be considered? That's nonsense. you know, there are people who are being cut off. We have a due process issue that's being just knocked out of the park here at this point. And if listen, if the report, you've already seen the draft report, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely.
By the way,
555 pages.
by the way, let me take another quick, if I may, on the report itself. This is, sorry, wrong one. From here, this is the first page of the report, but getting back down to almost the end of the report. A little bit smaller here. Sorry about that. Come on, guys. The intent of, which I thought was kind of weird, is the analysis of the report basically says that we should have 7 more council districts. I never expected that to come out of the report. That's at the last page of it. And they go through this whole analysis of what it would be like if, as far as the present council districts, how many people they have. And if they went all the way down to suggesting as many as 31 council districts to change it, and suggesting right now just add 7 to it, brings up to 22 council districts. I never expected to see that in a report for redistricting at all. That doesn't have anything to do with, as far as what I'm concerned, on what we can do right now. That's going to take a whole bunch of stuff to end up being done. So
yeah, I think they're recommending that to look at that for 2032, 2031.
Well, I understand, but when we look at what we got right now, this is what we have to be dealing with here.
Right.
And for them to be coming up with that stuff on that, I mean, there's a great deal of that report that's spent on just exactly that particular issue, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So, you know, listen, I understand the process. I agree with Bob taking a position of let's be quiet about it. I know that staff has not in any way tried to influence us on anything that we were doing concerning our approach or our positions with it. And that's appropriate. And those that listen know full well that they had to do disclosures at the beginning if there was anybody from staff that was talking to them or any of the council members, because of the conflict of interest that would come up at that point and see who's being influenced. Whether or not they did that fully or not is another story. But if Bob doesn't do something, that report is going to be on your desk on Friday, that formal report. It's going to be voted on tomorrow and it will then come out. It'll get on your desk on Friday. If on Monday morning, Bob doesn't have something to say about it, a lot of us are going to say, what? How come? Why hasn't he come out and said, hey, wait a minute? And he should be taking a position both on that and the LA Unified School District of keeping us as one community. That's the big deal. And I cannot imagine, and I know from having talked to the president of the chamber has the same issue. The district, the way it's drawn, is not working for anybody. So listen, you can be quiet as long as you want to on that point, but if he doesn't have press conferences, doesn't want us to come in and stand around him and say, listen, you're right, we can't have this, we should be doing that. We'll be happy to do that. This is the time for us, and it's a short period of time, for us to be coming together to try to work to get this stuff done. There's going to have to be a whole lot of horse trading on that. Tell us if you have an idea, John or Jeff, of what that's going to look like with that ad hoc committee on trying to redraw some areas. And they got problems on the other side of the hill too, with some of the Asian communities too.
Yeah, I think,
go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say, it's one thing, and I'm sure you all are all aware of this, is, you know, one of the main reasons they do redistricting, right, is to make sure all the districts end up with roughly the same number of people. And the 3rd district had the most growth of any district. And so something is going to need to shrink. Something is going to need to shrink and get cut out. Even if the district roughly looks the same, something is going to have to be moved out of the 3rd council district.
They can move it out of the east section and put that.
Yeah, no, I mean,
there's plenty of easy things to do.
You know, and I'm not, that's just a reality, is the boundaries are going to have to shift a little bit for that reason.
I think one of the main problems, though, if I could jump in real quick.
57666 answered that.
Yeah,
they could do that.
And
you know, I'll say, Marty, and well, Aaron, you had a question. I'm sorry. I'll address.
I was just going to jump in as well and say, you know, this is all because Bob's appointed commissioner, Richard Katz, had this gigantic overreach of trying to get Encino and Sherman Oaks in the district. When Bob saw that, why didn't he replace him? Every single neighborhood council, other organizations in CD3 came out against this map. Every single one of them. Katz knew this, yet he didn't address it once. Why didn't Bob replace them? Plenty of other council members replaced their commissioners when they weren't doing a good job or an adequate job.
You know, it's an interesting question, Aaron, because I can't answer you for sure because I haven't asked Bob that question to tell you from his words to my lips. But what I will tell you, and it goes back to that there was some things, and you might have seen this in the report, John, if you've read some of it, that the placement of certain commissioners because the council member didn't like the way they behaved in other areas ended up kind of backfiring and causing more disruption. And you had like Jackie Goldberg yelling at that.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it was like, it got nasty, right?
It was a zoo.
Yeah. And then you got Nuri Martinez, who created the ad hoc. Her own commissioner was the chair, Fred Ali. He voted for this. And then another commissioner of hers voted against it. So I guess to answer you on this, Aaron, again, it was to like, okay, is he doing anything? There was nothing that said, unless you were doing something that was proven, illegal, untoward, taking, that to replace it, because he wasn't supposed to, as a council member, have his hands on this. It was supposed to be to the commission. He was never supposed to discuss it. I think something that Richard pointed out in the September 30th meeting, when everyone was arguing about whether to go for the K2.5 map and include this map L that came in at the last minute that I know was drawn by another council office, he said, is this a perfect map? No. Will it ever be perfect? No. But the ad hoc committee of the Valley said, we're 38% of the city. We've never had 5 complete council districts in the Valley. We should get 5 2/3. And so it accomplished that. There was a designation asking for Mulholland to be the defining border, the Mulholland Ridge, right?
Right.
And there was and then people said, look, some people said, Nithya Raman and Paul Kokorian, what are you talking about? They're not in their districts. And somebody said, it doesn't say anywhere in the Voting Rights Act that you're supposed to protect incumbents. So people have got and people accused Bob Blumenfield, Aaron, of being a segregationist. And he took personal, and I take personal offense to that. I mean, he's married to a Black woman. He is Jewish. And you have somebody yelling at him that he went and somehow manufactured this district. So I don't think he thought that it was the place to address and replace anything. Because as hard as it is, and I'll end with this, John, Aaron, that even if we wanted to, or any of us, to change how the Valley was constructed, it's this crazy jigsaw map that affects, as Jeff was pointing out, the populations in the other areas, and you can't be any more of 10% total, 5% above.
There's a deviation that has to be taken onto it.
Right.
John,
So,
what Aaron's question really is dealing with stuff that's already happened. I want to deal with stuff that's going to go on now to correct the problem that's there.
Starting tomorrow.
Yeah,
yes.
literally starting right away.
Bob
What is this going to look like?
Yeah.
What's going to happen here?
Bob has lobbied to be on the ad hoc committee. He went to you talk about the sausage being made again.
Yep.
He went to Nuri Martinez's office yesterday. He wants to be on the committee. Did she commit to putting him on the committee? No. And he asked her directly twice. I don't know, I being open with you. You're not going to get any schmooze and any snow.
We don't need it. We don't need that.
Exactly. Is she want someone on who she can control? Maybe. Does she think she can't control Bob? Maybe. I don't know, but she didn't commit to putting Bob on it. And Bob is a thinker. You guys all know this. Maybe he doesn't stand up, like you said earlier, and say, we're press conference in front of the RVs. He wants to be deliberative and policy wonk guy and think it through properly and do it right and fight for his communities.
You can't fight if you get run over by a steamroller. And
I know.
Bob's got to start facing realities, not his political dreams, but the realities of we're getting.
John, anything we can do to help?
But Marty, I'll just respond to that a little bit. And Bob is who he is, and his style is to try to be collaborative. But I will tell you, when you are in the council chambers and people are speaking around the horseshoe, there are people who talk and nobody really listens to what they have to say. And when Bob talks on an issue of import, people listen to what he has to say, right? And that is proven effective, I think, for the residents of the third district.
John,
And
can we do
Marty,
anything, can we do anything to help get?
Yes,
on that?
yes.
Yeah.
And two things, Marty, I don't discount your frustration. What I will say is, I didn't just pick to work and leave where I had security to work for him for security. I do not have a union. I am not a civil servant. I could have left. There's plenty of council staff that I meet that work not only for us in the past, but other who are, I don't know who they're there for. They're not there to fight on behalf of the communities or their boss. They're looking for something else. There's a reason I stuck around, and I will keep fighting for that. And Bob will listen to us. I'm sorry you're frustrated. We will talk to him.
Listen, I want you to know.
Lots of notes.
I
Lots of
want
notes.
you to know something. I personally, yes, I'm frustrated, but I'm frustrated for the people that I represent on the neighborhood council and with the WHO. And you know what? I live in an area that's virtually in John Lee's neighborhood. Okay, across the street is John Lee's, so I'm out of the way. This isn't directly impacting me per se, but I'm frustrated as hell for the people that live in Woodland Hills and the people that live in Canoga Park and the people in Winnetka, and we're getting screwed.
Yeah, John,
We are getting royally run over.
We worked on the 2034 specific plan for
Yeah.
years to get that done.
Yeah.
And we decided to go to a dense area to develop that particular area out there. And it's now been cut in half at Victory Boulevard. That's
Yes.
nonsense on that stuff. Trying to keep communities together, it makes no sense at all for that to happen. And when you start going back and you look at the map at 57666, you'll see that is kept all together. And with your point, Jeff, as far as being able to change some of those other areas to get rid of it because we have more population, that was done on the east side to put them back over in the other districts to where they're much more of a homogeneous community that's there. John, how are we going to be able to can we assist in some fashion on getting Bob on the ad hoc committee? Is that a thing for us to do? And how do we go about doing it if we can at all?
It's a great question. A couple things you said, John. I agree with you wholeheartedly about the Warner Center specific plan. I just want to say this before I answer you on what you can do. One is, I'm not worried about, and I just said this morning to Jeff and to Jake on our team, I'm not worried about a council member having an asset in his district. I'm worried about you, the Warner Center specific plan people who helped make it happen, getting something you worked on for years, as you just said, divided in half. That's what matters. Anyone who goes to a mall or goes to LAX or goes to the zoo, they don't know whose district that is in, and they don't care. For some reason, council members want to claim these assets like it's something that makes a difference, and it's ridiculous. But for you, as a constituent, who's someone who actually worked on the plan, I agree 100% with all of you. You deserve to have that area whole.
John, one more if I can. I'm going to come back to the question. You're not really answering my question yet.
Yeah, no. What can you do?
What can you do? One more point to it.
Yeah.
Pierce College, we
Yes.
have worked on for decades,
Yes.
literally, to make sure that farm is going to be protected. They have
Yes.
tried to get a hold of the properties up there and to do everything with those, selling off those properties, because the community college district wants some money. All those money's to go back downtown. We never even see them out here. We have fought for decades to keep the farm, to keep that property there. I was even on one of the committees where they wanted to turn it into a golf course up there, for God's sakes. And
Yeah.
the way they were going to interface with the college was the students are going to be able to learn how to repair tractors, or they could work in the pro shop up there and figure out how to make change on things they can do. Come on, that asset, if you will, it goes to somebody else. It's going to be lost forever in the community. That's not just the Warner Center. It's not just a specific plan. It's other things that we have worked on for decades to try to keep this the way that it is. Now, how can we help? How can we help?
Yes.
this done?
And I'm just agreeing. And I'm sorry if you think I never want to be accused of not answering a question. What I'm saying is, I think those assets belong to you. They don't belong to a council member. That's what I'm saying.
I understand.
Yeah. So what you can do is, again, I write to the council president. She's the one who's deciding who's on this ad hoc committee. And you say exactly what you said here, how important it is that your representative, I mean, first of all, you say that the Warner Center should be whole. The Pierce College belongs with Woodland Hills. And you say that the representative we had who's representing those areas is willing to fight to make sure that those stay in our areas. So we think he deserves a place at the table. And I'll give you her email address and her chief of staff and her deputy chief of staff. I'll put it in the chat right now if you want.
Please. Please.
Do have some questions,
me.
hands raised from
Yeah,
the audience too, John.
I'm sorry. What was that? What was it, Aaron?
I was just gonna say, we do have some hands raised from the audience too for phone
I
calls.
got it. Who is, Bobby, is that you? That
I thought, yeah,
Go ahead, Bobby.
that
Good
last comment, that's your job, John. And your job is to come to us. And so we can work on that together, not to go tell the constituents, here, you go write the council president. Our problems with the council president, you go write the council president. That's the whole problem with this conversation. Come to us if your boss is having an issue and he truly wants this Woodland Hills to stay together. He could have come to us and we can work together. And that's not anything that I've heard from either one of you.
We can't.
And that's all I want to say.
Well, thank you, Bobby, but we couldn't do, well, what we were trying to say before is we weren't going to step into this until the commission puts their final draft, which goes tomorrow night.
I understand exactly. I understand exactly what you're saying, and there are ways around it. And if Bob didn't feel like he was benefiting from this new council map, he would have come to people, and he didn't.
No, I think he didn't want to be accused of being violative unethical behavior, because that's what he could be accused of, like the chief of staff for another council office who behaved exactly like that.
Fine, but does he want to get accused of being steamrolled? That's the real critical question, because it's us that's getting steamrolled. He's just sitting there being polite. There's a time for politeness, and there's a time not to be polite.
And I'm sorry, but I wish that the Nuri Martinez would listen to us, Bobby. But if she doesn't, maybe she'll listen to the people of Los Angeles better. And that's where I'm asking for your support. If you want you to be involved, this is where we're asking to help mobilize you to support us, so we aren't going at it alone. I think I've been listening very clearly that you want to be more involved, and this is how we're trying to get you more involved. And I'm sorry that we haven't gotten you more involved as an office. I absolutely agree with you.
But
John,
Bob's got to come out as a leader. He's got to be vocal. He's got to take a leadership position right in front of the crowds. We'll back him, but he's got to get out front of this. And he's not doing that. Is that clear? I mean, yes. I don't know what to say. I understand what you're saying. Bob's playing a political game. He's making nice. But at some point, somebody's got to move to the floor and somebody's got to lead. We'll support him.
Marty, I'm not arguing with you. John asked me to talk about how the sausage is being made. I'm telling you, the sausage is being made.
I got you,
We'd
John.
like a different recipe.
So would I. So would I.
John, I see that you gave us the emails both for the chief of staff and the other individual, not for her directly. Are you saying that we should just be doing it to the chief of staff as opposed to her, directly to her? Because she's not going to see it anyway, I would assume.
Yeah, it's most important. They're the ones deciding, but I just not sure offhand what Nuri's direct email address is.
All right, I can track that down too, so we can give it to all of them at that point in time. You know, I remember sitting with and I'll even say who it was. It was with Bob Hertzberg, and back in the days we're working on secession, and so you know that I was one of the chief petitioners for Valley Cityhood, and I just saw one of the other comments in here going, maybe it's time to go back and take a look at that. And there's been talk about trying to do a new city from the 405 west and turn that into a separate city. I think we do fine with that. We may come back up to that at some point in time. But nonetheless, I remember working with Hertzberg, and his comment was, are you going to work with us, or is it time to go to war? And you know what? It's time to go to war. Because if this is not going to work out this way, then as far as I'm concerned, the other city council members are disrespecting us out here, have no regard for us whatsoever out here whatsoever, and the gloves are off then at that point in time. And it's going to take federal legislation off of this, and I'm sorry, federal litigation, and that's where we go. And I hate to see something like that going. We'll tie it up until the next census probably at that point. That's just nuts. you know, we've got a community out here we've worked very hard for and worked very diligently for to try to make it good. And I'm up there with Marty going, I feel bad for our members that are there they've worked hard. They worked hard and they want to see government working for them. And a lot of people are throwing their hands up in the air. We've got a lot of younger people that have come on board at this point in time who want to get involved, who want to see stuff work in government, who want to be part of that process. And all they're seeing is there's this amorphous group that makes the sausage someplace and goes, here, you're going to have to eat it whether you like it or not. And that's just the way that it goes. And we're trying to tell you that's not the way this should be done. And we're here to help with that process, John. We really are.
I appreciate
And,
that.
and the
John.
message, you know, certainly has been taken loud and clear that, you know, you all want Woodland Hill to stay together. And I mean, I'll just share a story.
And we want
Many,
Bob to
many,
be a leader.
yeah, no, but like I
Yeah,
said,
Marty.
I mean, and we've said it is, you know, Bob is a big believer in process, and the process is that it's in the commission's hands until tomorrow night.
And then,
And that,
And
then he will,
And then Marty, I'm
and
gonna talk.
he'll tear off his suit and we'll see a big Superman logo. Is that the modus operandi that we're looking at?
Well, let me say something. First of all, John, I appreciate you saying you're here to help and we should engage. But something I want to remind you from the beginning, Marty. My cousin, vet, who was 83 this year, lives close to where you sit on the fringes of the district, Shoup and Oxnard, up near Victory. Okay, he's been here since the 50s. So is my cousin Sally, who died a couple of years ago, who would have been 90 this year. So if anyone thinks that I am not personally vested in the people that have been around for many decades in my own family in this area and don't care, they're mistaken. I do care. And I'm fighting for their memories because they're all the people that you just mentioned that wanted Warner Center Association to create Warner Center. They believe in it. And they may not have been active members of WHO or neighborhood council because they were working too, but they care. I'm personally vested in this. And when we go forward, I hear what you're saying, Marty. So I'm kind of the enforcer for the hockey reference. When Wayne Gretzky used to score goals, for those of you who know him, he had Marty McSorley enforcing. Believe me, I'm Bob's enforcer. That's why I'm riled up, because I get into it and I do fight for us. You want him to speak up louder. I'm going to talk to him about that and see how we can do that in the Bob Blumenfield way, but get what you're saying that you want to, because he does have a way that he does it, but we're all, and we're going to also figure out a way to do it the way you see fit to do so. It's always a work in progress. I don't take it lightly what you ask for us to do.
Jeff, you sound like you had a point for us. Then I've got Shelley that's online here. We need to get her online for stuff about the LA Unified School District and that redistricting. What'd you have, Jeff? Go ahead with.
no, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Shelley.
Do we want to take the questions, John, from the audience first before we move on? They've had their hands up for a while.
Go ahead on it, Aaron. I thought we got most of them already. Go ahead.
Well, no, Heath Klein has a question and Nancy Wood has a question. I think their hands are raised.
Oh, you're talking about online?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what we can do to get somebody online here. Who's got?
Well, just Heath has his hand raised now.
Nancy Wood had put her hand down, so maybe just Heath.
All right,
Fine.
Heath. Heath, let me go ahead and open you up. You go ahead and just and unmute yourself. You're there, Heath. Go ahead.
Thank you, and good evening, gentlemen. You know, full disclosure, I've been a backer of Bob since the beginning, from the Berman days, and Richard Katz going back 35 years. And I feel Richard has sold us down the river, and I'm hearing talk in the community of this whole thing is about political gerrymandering and all the city council people, including Bob, lining themselves up for their next job. And, you know, what Marty has said and what Bob, you know, and John have said, Bob is going to have to step out on this because he's going to lose his backing. And it's not for Woodland Hills. We'll be fine. I mean, we are the community that does have assets. We do have a voice, but I've been working with Reseda, Canoga Park, Winnetka, West Hills, you know, for 20 years. And quite frankly, not all those communities have all the assets and wherewithal and capacity that we do, and we help one another. And we are this homogeneous community. The community, you know, we got it right. We're an integrated community. We are, for the most part, you know, colorblind, socioeconomically blind. These are our neighbors and friends, and to tear us apart because we pray together, we play on the same soccer fields, our kids go to school together, we eat and shop in each other's communities. We're one community. And if Bob doesn't step forward and get behind map 57666, because it does address the race issues, it does represent the proportionate population adjustments that needs to be done, and it has the compact districts. And whether you call it 57666 or just common sense of aligning the neighborhood councils as the way to draw the districts, you can have the valley that has, you know, the 5 whole districts, and then, you know, 3/4 of a district for the 6 and 25% being the bridge district in the Cahuenga Pass. It respects all the communities. And if you were listening to those meetings, then you heard the people across the valley speak up, you know, the people in Shadow Hills. 5766 addresses everything for the whole city. And it represents what the majority of the people in these communities want. And, you know, if you need to tweak it a block or two somewhere, that's fine. But to ignore the valley, you're going to lose it. And you're going to see a repeat of what happened, you know, 22 years ago. And I'll get off my soapbox, but, you know, Bob is, you know, got to put on that Superman suit and fast, or he's not going to have a following. And this is coming from a follower.
Thanks, Keith. We appreciate that deeply on that. Shelley, you're available to unmute yourself. We want to find
Yes.
about. Tell us
Yeah.
what happened with the. You were online tonight with the LA Unified School District. That map is also now going to come to the city council for them to eventually to approve or to vote or to move it around as well. And I would imagine the ad hoc committee from the city council should probably be taking that one up as well. Can you give us an update on what does that map
Yeah,
look like?
well, you know, a similar, yeah, exactly. Similar situation happened with, once again, particularly the West San Fernando Valley being completely ignored by the LAUSD Redistricting Committee. The WHO sent letters, lots of community members sent letters saying that District 4 was a tiny sliver, Nick Melvoin's district, that goes all the way down to Westchester, Venice, Palisades, Brentwood, and he had a tiny, tiny sliver in the West San Fernando Valley. The original map 2 that was up, that the WHO supported, and most of the neighborhood councils and the community, was a map that took that little sliver out of District 4 and put it in Scott Schmelson's District 3, which represents the valley. As Heath said, we share the same softball, religious organizations, and the idea of redistricting to keep communities of interest together. So what did they do? They proposed a brand new map 2 and 2 other maps where they enlarged Nick Melvoin's reach up to Reseda. So now he has a district that was the largest geographically, going from Reseda all the way down to Westchester. We have nothing in common with Westchester or Venice. And, you know, when today on the final map, callers, 10 of us at least, called in and said, what about the West Valley? Wendy Gruhl, Nick Melvoin's commissioner, said, well, most people are happy about what we did, and District 4 had to go in the West Valley, and that's the end of it.
I just
So
put up a
they
map, by the way, that shows Nick's small little finger that comes up in here to the valley. That just
right, but now it's a much bigger finger that's going on, you know, up into Reseda, and so they once again completely ignored the wishes of the West Valley. We are now the stepchild. You know, he can't possibly cover a district that big. He can't possibly understand the concerns of the West San Fernando Valley when his main focus is West LA. So the map that was approved today is map 2, but a completely different map 2 than the WHO supported. And it is now going to the city council, and they'll be up to the city council. So what we want to know is, will Bob come out against this map that once again disenfranchises his district in terms of LAUSD, completely disenfranchises us?
Well, I appreciate the update, Shelley, and I'll certainly, and I'm looking at the map right now that you posted here, and I will, we will talk to Bob about it and let him know what's going on. I'm discouraged to hear about this too. I absolutely agree that we shouldn't be tied to Westchester. I mean, that's ridiculous.
No, and actually the map that John just put up, it has increased. They are now, pulling Nick's district up more. And Wendy Gruhl's answer to that was, well, that way we gave him more of a district so that some of the neighborhood schools are kept together. But he now has the most geographically stretched community. He has, in terms of minorities, he has the least ethnically diverse community now. So they focused all of their time on District 2 and 5 and did not care one bit about the West San Fernando Valley, nothing. So if you go and you look under LAUSD redistricting, they accepted map 2 tonight, and that's what's moving to the city council.
Just taking some notes.
I'll just jump in real quick as well and just say, when we had Bob as our guest last year, and we were trying to work with Bob on some housing projects that were trying to be built on LAUSD property.
Right.
Bob said he didn't want to get, he was not going to get involved with other jurisdictions.
Mm.
And obviously that didn't sit well with the group.
No, I mean, I think, and to build on what Aaron said is, when Bob's community is submitting 1,600 petitions that says you need to protect, our school sites, and he ignores that, how is that supporting the community and advocating for what's best for his constituents?
John, by the way, Shelley went out and got those 1,600 petitions within about 2 days worth of time up there to hold those 5 LA Unified School District areas that go all the way up into the northern part of the valley. But we got 3 of them down here that are empty that we can utilize to actually build some schools on that we're going to need because of the development that's going to go on in Warner Center. And Bob did not want to get into that fight over that particular thing at all with that. But now the jurisdiction of where the boundaries are going to be drawn is in his lap, because it does come back to council for them to make the ultimate determination. And again, while these redistricting commissions that are there, they are advisory. Ultimately, the city council has to make those determinations. And this is a time for him to get in there, and the gloves need to be coming off. We need to have that one district. You see, it runs all the way down to El Segundo. That's nuts. And to have Nick being bothered by us to try to do something out here is not the way that should be done. Scott Schmidt has got the other district just above that. Scott knows the area really well, and he should have that district that runs south of Ventura Boulevard all the way basically up to Mulholland. And there's no reason for why that can't be drawn. So, you guys are there. And again, we're talking about the making of the sausage. Tell us what's going to go on now. What is staff going to do with it? Is this, you guys going to sit back and let Bob just say, well, this is what we're doing, or you guys got input that's going to go on in that process? What's going to happen now?
Well, first of all, I'm not a yes man. I've been with Bob a long enough time where I learned a lot from him, but he also, I've been with him long enough where he wants me to tell him what I truly think, not just, oh, this is how it is. He looks at advisement, and a lot of that advisement comes from what I hear in the community. And that comes from my days as being a field deputy and now here. And I'm hearing from you, and I'm taking a lot of notes, and I'm going to discuss every single aspect. And if I need to follow up with each of you, I will, because that's what's going to go on. As far as stepping in, and when you say what's stepping into the LASD thing, I recall when I was a director in Rec and Parks in South LA and Wilmington Harbor City, trying to do joint use agreements so that we could use their fields. And they are a pain in the butt to deal with. They didn't want to do anything. We gave them public fields, parks fields, and they wouldn't give us their fields in return. And that was just a microcosm of the issues that we had fighting with them at a much lower level. I was just a director. But when you say they're dividing up the community and I see this map, it is something to speak up about. I mean, you probably realize too that Mayor Villaraigosa tried to take over LASD, right? That was his big cornerstone thing, and it failed because I am not a fan of how it's been managed, and it's too big. And to have a few districts like that, and one, of course, that affects us here, right here in the Valley and Woodland Hills to down there, is something that we are going to have to say that this is just another division. So that's what I'm going to talk to Bob about.
Well, and then from that point on, are you aware that the ad hoc commission is also going to handle the stuff for LA Unified School District as well?
Am I aware? No, that that commission, city council will not have a say over what goes on. We don't have the power to tell the LASD. I mean, we can go on record with these resolutions, they call them, but do we really have the power to say as a city council? No, we don't.
Well, actually, that's not
correct.
That's not correct, because the next step is these maps are going to the city council for approval from LAUSD.
And the city council cannot approve that. They're still advisory. They come to you guys.
The LAUSD maps.
The redistricting maps are now going to the city council.
You'll get a report tomorrow from them as well, on Friday rather.
It is, yeah,
And
it's a
the
bizarre.
city
It is a
has-
bizarre thing, John. But it's I
is.
don't even understand why, but we do.
So now
Yeah.
Bob has two major fights on his
You got it.
hands, starting
Well,
tomorrow.
Well, thank you, because that doesn't make any sense. That's actually bothersome. We don't have any say over LASD any other time. And then now all of a sudden we have say. I mean, I had Butner to council to talk about and we had a bunch of things we wanted to talk to you about COVID and the restrictions, and we had no power over them. But now they're going to give us some sort of say over redistricting.
Yeah, I mean, we run their elections. That's about all we do.
Well, now
So
you
the
get to,
districts, yeah.
as I understand it, unless I'm really wrong on this, and Jeff, you're an attorney as well. My understanding is that indeed the city council has to approve those maps. And in that process, since they're advisory only at that stage, those maps can be redrawn. And this is an opportunity again to step out and to do something that's there. And listen, as far as I'm concerned, let's take the following, that it's never been done before at that particular point to try to redraw those once they come in and they just rubber stamp it. Well, maybe this is a time, with the gloves being off, to go to war. And this stuff that's been going on out here, again, we looked at secession on the Valley, like I said, 30 years ago, I guess it was. We looked at breaking up LA Unified School District at the same time, looked at breaking up the college district at the same time, because they're just too large, too big, and too overwhelming to have this type of stuff going on. And when you look at this map, look at this. Look at his district that's sitting in. This is Nick's district. This is us up here. This is Scott's district. That's nuts. That's just, that little area that's right below this is Ventura Boulevard that runs through here. That little area that's right there is what we're concerned about with dealing with him when he's got to deal with all of this all the way around here. That's crazy. This area should be cut off at Mulholland and put into the district up here with Scott. This is Scott's district through here. Cut it across through this way and put it back up into that location. It's an easy one to take a look at.
And I guess put everything that's east of the 405 and south of the 101 there, 170 back over to Melvoin, because how that makes no sense. It's Scott's got
to go straight across, right at Mulholland, basically.
To Hollywood. That's crazy.
Okay.
The thing I'll say too is like you said, you made a good point, John. If this has always been rubber stamped in the past, it's ridiculous that it even comes to city council. And yes, I hear who Marty's saying we should stand up and not let that just happen. But that's the problem with this. There's a problem I have with the process, that we don't have a say over LASD. And then why is anybody going to have the political will to change this? Well, you make a good point. Maybe we should, if they're going to give us that power, which obviously I'm hearing it makes no sense whatsoever when they don't give us power any other time. Then maybe we need to step in and cause whatever political blah, blah, blah it causes.
Well, again, what we're looking at is otherwise we're being disenfranchised, and that's what it really comes down to. And the disenfranchisement is from us lawyers like to play with is a due process denial. And we don't have a right to be able to have our concerns to be heard in those particular areas. The voice is not being heard at all because we're just too small of a voice. We're marginalized at that stage.
And let me ask, John, if I could ask you a question, anyone else who wants to answer it, please. Could I? Can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, sure, go, absolutely.
Yeah, it's back to our redistricting map, because I'm not here to defend. When we talk about the process, we're like, okay, we're observing too and going, whoa, how did it go this way? How did it go that way? How did the maps change, right? Because we weren't involved. When they tried to get 5 2/3 districts in the valley for the first time ever, and their argument also, as you may have seen in the draft, was Koreatown was put together as one whole for the first time. Several ethnic communities were maintained or increased. And was there anything that you thought that, I mean, I guess my question is, for people, those of us who are really valley centric, you know, did you feel good at all that there was 5 2/3 district? I mean, what I'm saying is, if it could have been redrawn where CD3 doesn't look the way it is, but we could still keep 5 2/3 in the valley, is that something that all of you would have thought should still be a goal?
Where did 5 2/3 become the magic number? That's what I'd like you to explain to us, John, before we can answer that.
Yeah, well, I think the intention was in the way that right now, you know, CD5 is mostly on the other side of the hill and just has Encino, and CD4 is mostly on the other side of the hill and then it just grabs in Sherman Oaks, to have only one district cross over from the valley to the other side that it has to do for population numbers, but have 5 districts wholly in the valley, and then all the rest of the valley be the majority of a district, with the idea that then if it has a majority of the population, would likely be able to select the
And just
council
to
member.
say,
Excuse me.
well, and thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff, because just to say, part of the reason I'm asking that question, Marty, is that we know where you stand on Woodland Hills. We're having, like you said, John Walker earlier, what are we going to do in the future? So here we are, we're going to go back to Bob and talk to him. And we're having a kind of an impromptu meeting right now about what you want. We know about Woodland Hills. When we get the pushback, or he gets the pushback, or he has to negotiate with these other council members on who gets what and all this other, you know, jigsaw stuff, is 5 2/3 in the valley a goal of yours, aside from obviously keeping Woodland Hills and the current communities together? Or do you think that having Encino, as Jeff pointed out, and Sherman Oaks kind of being, you know, because those areas always complain that they're just like we said with Schmerlson, that what do they care about us in the valley when most of their district, whoever represents that area, is on the west side? So I'm just,
John, have you seen the map
Excuse me.
57666?
yes.
I'd like to answer
mean,
that
that-
question. The answer
Yeah.
to your question, John, is if you think that's a message that's going to win Bob votes in next November, you are wrong. No one cares about the number.
No, that's not what I was asking.
Well, that's kind of what it felt like.
Well,
So
it's not what I was asking. I was
All right.
asking what your goals are.
But what is your?
If your goals are just to keep Woodland Hills together, Bobby, and you don't care about the rest of it, okay, we'll keep fighting and fighting. But I was trying to figure out how we will go into a room with a bunch of other council members who want what they want. And, but that's okay. I mean,
We
that's,
don't have the map 57666 available to put up, do we?
I put it in the chat.
There
I
was
put it
a.
in the chat.
okay.
You put it in the chat?
Just
I
now,
did. And the
Aaron?
reason I brought it up again, because John, that is 5 2/3 districts.
Okay.
And that it is like 99% north of Mulholland. I mean, it does everything we want it to do. And everyone has said they want it. And yet we haven't heard anything from the council office on it.
John, I think that the issue of the council districts in the valley, We've always needed to have 5 strong voices out here. And listen, from a practical standpoint, with some of the big things that goes on, it doesn't matter. That was the reason why we were looking at secession to begin with. You know, it's the rule of 15. We got 5 that are out here against the other 10 on the other side of the hill. We can never get a majority on anything that's going to be required without having to give something up. And as a result, we have to make such horse trading in that process that it doesn't work for us. So the idea is to have 5 votes out here in the Valley on things that come up with representatives that are going to do something for us, because by population, that's where it should be. The fact that we have one of the districts goes back over the other side of the valley, on the other side of the hill, is somewhat problematic, because it splits the loyalty of that particular representative. If we're able to have all 5 that would be totally encompassed out here in the valley, that would be better. But I think the population does not permit that at the present time. So if we're going to have one of them, it's going to have to go back on the other side. It's a question of what makes sense in that particular process. We get over to the eastern side of the valley, we start looking at Universal City and what goes back over from Universal City back over on the other side of the hill. That kind of makes a little bit more sense because of the continuity of those communities, the things that they're interested in and what have you. But, you know, as far as the horse trading is concerned, it gets difficult when you start looking at how you're going to split somebody on the other side of the hill. But if you take a look at 57666, it's pretty much there. And Aaron, I'm sorry, I can't get yours. Oh, wait a minute, there's your map. Let me see if I can pull this up here.
Well, and John, while you're doing that, Aaron, I just want to say to you, as I look at this, I'm going to tell you right away, here's one of the problems with this map, not for us, because I see what you're saying and I like it. Nuri Martinez is not going to let go of the Sepulveda Basin or the Van Nuys Airport. And that's one of her fights.
Well, they just put that in there at the very last minute, the Sepulveda Basin.
Yeah, I'm just saying, well, Van Nuys Airport too. So I'm looking at this map in that district. I know Heath mentioned, I mean, we still have Canoga Park, we'd lose Reseda. Hey, we're fine with this in theory. I mean, it keeps our current district together. It keeps the natural districts of Warner Center, Woodland Hills, Tarzana. I get what you're saying. It brings Encino. It's got West Hills. I think I'm just telling you, and that's why I brought that up about what do we fight for in the room, Bobby.
But Nuri Martinez, she doesn't have Sepulveda Basin now.
Yeah, she does.
She does.
Yeah.
What, a little slice of it?
You mean now in the current in the new? You don't mean now currently in her CD6. You mean now in K2.5? You mean?
Well, no, I meant now. Well, because I know that they moved the.
Yeah, she currently does have it.
Got it.
But that's the thing. See, that's a real thing. Like, she's going to push on that. So how do we maneuver this around? Because I like I said, I feel like this is an impromptu meeting, which is great. I mean, on what can we fight for you that you want, and I see it 57666. But I just want you to know that I know she's going to push back on this. But I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means, you know, and somebody told us, I don't know if you guys have heard this, that there's a labor map being floated around out there that council members are looking at that takes Tarzana away from CD3.
Okay, so.
Well, I think we want to keep Woodland, and we want to keep just like Woodland Hills, we want to keep Tarzana together as a community too that we care about. You know, I'm just.
Well, I think frankly, Tarzana, and I presented this when I called into the council, frankly, Tarzana has more in common with Encino than it does with Woodland Hills or West Hills or Canoga Park. So if it means lumping Encino and Tarzana together with another section, personally, I think that makes more sense than anything.
Interesting. And I mean, I don't know if everyone on who feels that way, not to put you on the spot, that Tarzana has more in common with Encino than Woodland Hills. Like, I used to think after living here 30 years, I always felt Tarzana had more in common with Woodland Hills, but that might have come from my family that, you know, grew up in both places.
I think it's kind of shared almost between the two. Very frankly, there's certain issues that might be more Tarzana for Encino-ish, and some that would be more for Woodland Hills-ish, if you will. But I think when you start looking at 57666, that it does all the things you're looking at. Very frankly, it does the 5 2/3. We have 5
Right.
total ones that are there and another 2/3 is back up here. So the fact that we have at least 5 solid ones that are there is important. The 2/3 is helpful because we have somebody who's got at least 2/3 of loyalty out here to the valley. That gets us almost, if you will, to a 6 vote, if you will, on city council. You know, we need 7 in order to be able, I'm sorry, need 8 in order to be able to have a dominance, which we're not going to get. But nonetheless, I think that ends up working. But the continuity of communities is it. You look at the charter under charter 204D indicates that you're supposed to have a smallness of geographical area. It's supposed to be geographically
Right.
a compound. And this is not neither 3 nor 2 and 4 fit into that. And listen, there's problems on this side of the hill too. I understand the Korean community is messed up over this. Some of the Asian communities are messed up too and been split in half, and they're not happy about that either. So, you know, there really should be some serious discussions and horse trading, if you will, that's being done, and taking a look at what's happening. Here's the other problem, John, and this is where we get into difficulties on this, is we would like to be able to see what's going on with that. And the councilman, as opposed to coming back each day and going, oh, well, that was a tough day, there's no discussions, unfortunately, with us about what happened that day and what's going on and what are the other possibilities of things happening. You know, listen, you know, as a lawyer, and Jeff will tell you this too, there's certain requirements for confidentiality that goes on and stuff, and not disclosing things, and who can you trust in the conversations, what have you. I know from the work that we've done before, especially with Westfield on working with contracts on them, on getting some agreements on stuff that went on with the promenade, that we have a group that works very, very well, that knows when they need to keep their mouth shut and not talk to anybody else, but has good strategies on things to be done. We're here, and we know that we can be of help in those particular processes too. And you know, you guys are not alone, and I think you need to recognize that, and you need to come back out here to us, the community, and let us help where we possibly can. I see there was a couple. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna say, like, I'm just thinking out loud too, when I look at 57666. I mean, you guys all know there's this fight about, you know, where's Nithya Raman's district gonna be, and people arguing, you know, from a certain sect that she's been disenfranchised, and the people just voted her in, and I'm assuming they would give her this district that's yellow in the middle here with Van Nuys, and the purple down below Studio City would be Krikorian. But who knows, right? And so is she going to fight that? And I think Nuri and the two of them who authored the motion are going to be a fight. And just so you know, and Bob's going to try and be the voice of reason and make this puzzle work. And I like what you said, John. I say it again. You know, I don't get to, like I did when I was in the field, be with the community as officially in official capacity like I did in the assembly. And we didn't always do homeowners organizations, neighborhood council was different. It was state assembly. So it was chambers, and then it was funding, you know, health safety nets, social safety nets. And not to wrap into a conclusion, but I just want to make sure that I'd love to come back again if you'll have me and talk more about what we can do. In the meantime, also having us stay in touch with you. And as you said, I've taken quite a few notes here about what we should be doing without reviewing them out loud, but heeding everything you're saying and making sure we're addressing it. I want us to stay in touch and really work on what you want. These ideas should be coming from you, not, as I said, from the Ivy Tower. I've been on the short end of that stick plenty of times when I didn't work down there.
And I can almost guarantee you, John, that the Chamber of Commerce is pretty much aligned with us on both these issues, both with LA Unified School District as well as this one. Want to keep the area together. Don't forget about LA Unified School District. That's a major thing to start working on. And again, what I'm hearing is nobody's really touched that one before. That's sort of interesting. If this is a time and an ability to be able to touch it, guess what? This is a good time for that to be massaged really well. Take the gloves off. We need to. Let's get in there and get this thing done, because it's going to affect not only just us as the adults, but it's affecting the kids on what's going to go on, and making sure that we have proper schools and that the voices are being heard in our community as to what things we want to have done in the LA Unified School District. You can imagine those parents that have kids that are in Nick's little finger that's up here just south of Ventura Boulevard, if those parents want to be heard compared to what the people are doing down by El Segundo, I got to tell you that their voice is probably not going to be heard because there's so many other voices throughout that entire district. So what does that do to the kids that are there? What does it do to the parents that are there? What kind of frustrations are there with that? That's why we're supposed to have in the redistrictings this continuity of neighborhoods. And that's not there. And that's the same thing what's going on with the council district too. And this is the time for it. John, you guys have been very good in listening. Aaron, do we have any more quick questions we need to be taking up at this point in time? I see Heath Klein, you still got your hand up. Is that intentional? Heath, I can unmute.
Yeah, he took it down. I mean, we have a lot of comments more than questions. I mean, I can just roll through them if you want.
Let's Heath, you unmuted you again. I saw you had your hand up. I know you had a bunch of things in the comments. Go ahead.
John and Jeff, to continue this, the Neighborhood Council in Woodland Hills, their WIP committee is meeting on this tomorrow night at 7. Come to that meeting. I can send you the agenda and the Zoom links, and we can continue this discussion and show you that every concern that you raised can be addressed easily and more efficiently and deliver the compact districts and so forth.
Yeah, send me the link, please.
Will do. Good night, gents.
That would be great. I'll try to make it.
Thanks,
as
Heath.
well.
Thank you,
Aaron,
Heath.
go ahead with a quick summary of the questions. We're gonna close this out. We're getting late here.
Just some of the comments and questions we need to think out of the basket with and for new opportunities. What is being done to remove tents in areas where they don't want to move? Is a question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that gets back to the 4118 piece,
Yeah,
and that's the idea is that we will, currently we don't have any place that's posted. And so, the council members' goal is always to try to find people housing, right? And the reality is the overwhelming vast majority of people, when they're offered a suitable housing solution, prefer the housing to the streets. If they're, the way the ordinance is written is that if they willfully refuse to move, they could be arrested. I mean, that's always the absolute last resort.
Has that happened?
It hasn't happened because the ordinance isn't in effect, right?
That's the resolution I was talking
Yeah.
about at the beginning that we're going to be posting, and that would be the last resort because we're hoping that we won't go to that. But will it get to that? It could.
But the reality is last fall when we did it, we got everyone who was in the underpasses, took an offer of housing and was gone. Some of them came back, and we had no way of preventing them from coming back. And that's the idea of the 4118 is we will actually have something enforceable that.
And they went away though, right? Because there was that threat of enforcement. Is that not true?
No, I think they went away because they were offered housing, which is better than the street.
Sorry,
there were
Jeff.
2 people with, I think serious mental health issues who didn't go. But and I think we'd expect that to be the case again, is that when offered housing, people when offered housing, given a choice date, right, that you have to have housing or move, they will take housing. That's been the experience, not only in the 3rd district, but every other council member that's tried to do it.
You do have homeless activists who think that they shouldn't have to move, and one of them is running for the 38th Assembly District up north. I will tell you also.
One of them is running for, well, if she's not drawn out of the district, one of them is running against Bob.
Right. And it's funny to me that her and I have to say the person that said here, due to the additional territory that Blumenthal wants, Blumenfield, I feel as though the West Valley be thrown to the wolves. He certainly has lost my vote. I'm sorry if that person's still on. I don't know why you think that Bob wants that. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't care if you think I am. Bob Blumenfield did not say, I want this additional territory. He had nothing to do with that. He had absolutely nothing to do with how that was decided and ended up that way. That's all I can say. And if he did, I sure as hell didn't know about it, but he didn't. And I just got over saying that I moved to this district. I wouldn't even have moved, if I was like, oh, there's a plan. I mean, it's just no, absolutely not.
Anything else there, Aaron?
Susan Stearns, we don't need any more sausage.
Agreed, agreed.
I think that leads us probably to the good night message at this point in time. And listen, Woodland Hills Homeowners Organization wants to thank both of you coming in and taking these barbs. We've hit you pretty hard on a lot of stuff, but I think anybody who comes here knows that that's what you're going to get. You're not going to get necessarily a pleasant treatment, but hopefully an educational treatment with that. And I think that for those people who have been listening to us, if you're not members, please join us. We need those numbers that are there. Go over to whho.com and join us. There's a PayPal over there for $25 for the household. And I think the message for tonight is we want a different recipe for the sausage, because it doesn't taste
Can I
really
say
good.
something in closing,
Tastes really
John?
good. Yeah.
And I said, I take everything that you and Bobby and Marty and Aaron said to heart. I started out saying that there's plenty of people obviously didn't get to see on this call that make up this community. I do not take it lightly personally. I say that from the bottom of my heart. And even if we're like going, okay, well, this didn't happen, or I don't agree, or I think this, not blowing you off. I take what you're saying, and I want to make sure that you know that I want to keep fighting for what it is. There's plenty of things I wanted to tell everyone about that Jeff and I, and things I wanted him to talk about that we worked on that I think you would have been able to give us some good feedback, or also maybe liked or maybe didn't like. And what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to write a little quick summary of each of them, at least just to start a few of them, and send them to you, John, and you share with the group as you will, because they are
Absolutely.
motions and actions, and I want to see what you think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously redistricting is, the most critical issue of the moment, right? But, once we're through this, we're happy to come back. I'm happy to come back and talk about some of the more, other issues.
And we would love to have
well.
you guys back and to find out what the new recipe looks like and tastes like at that stage too. So,
And by the way, I like you giving us barbs. I mean, this is like, grew up in hockey and boxing, and you don't go easy. You put it to the test, as what we signed up for. So keep us in check, and I will keep. I love the idea of fighting. And Marty, I know that sounds like a lot of chin wagging, but I
didn't say that.
no.
Well,
I'm saying that because believe me, I have been scolded in fights that I've gotten in downtown. That's all I'll say.
well, we'll know within the next week whether or not this discussion has produced anything that's going to be productive on that. And if not, then we're going to have to find some of the methods of being able to do it, because there's got to be something that's going to be done. It's time. Our community cannot get this messed up with what's going to go on for the future. You guys are right at the top. You're the head of the spear at this particular point to be able to jab it where it needs to be jabbed to make sure things are going to end up happening. So we thank you. We thank you. Thank you especially for staying after at this point in time. It's almost 10 minutes to 10 at this stage. Thank you all. We know that you have other lives too in this process.
Our drive home, though, is going to be very easy.
I got you. That's going to be it for sure. Listen, have a blessed evening, and thank you so much. We'll talk again.
You too. Be
Thank
safe,
you all.
everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.